Hi, sixth graders. Make sure you have your composition notebook. Remember, this is where we're going to keep our notes in all year long. And if you will, open up to the very first page and we're going to talk a little bit about taking notes. You want to make sure that you are keeping track of the number of the page that we're on. So as we take notes throughout the year, I'm always going to label up in the top corner what page we're on. That way we stay consistent and you always know where to look back. So today we're going to be taking our first page of notes, and so I'm going to put a number 1 up here in the corner. Of course, as we go on, we'll keep numbering. And our title is going to be always at the top. So up here in the top margin, you always want to make sure you copy down what is the topic that we're talking about. Don't skip this part, because when you need to look back at your notes, either maybe you're working on studying for a test or working on a study guide, or even if you're just practicing and you need to look back at something, you want to make sure you have a descriptive title up here so that you know what's going to be located on this page. So our very first page of notes for this year, talking about 6th grade math, our first topic is going to be simple ratios. And we're going to talk a lot about this concept of ratios as we move forward, but today we're just going to look at the simple versions. All right, so make sure you have your number, make sure you have your title at the top, and you just want to copy after me. If you need to pause this video and, catch up, if I'm writing too fast, writing too slow, you adjust, pause the video as you need. But we're on page 1, first topic of the year, simple ratios. So first let's talk about the definition of what a ratio even is. So a ratio is a comparison between two values. So think about what comparison means. It just means we're looking at one thing versus another thing. Or since we're talking about values, we're talking about numbers. So a number compared to another number. So let's just jump right into a first example. I'm going to draw a quick little picture here. So let's draw 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. So just draw 4 little squares on your paper. And then we're also going to draw right beside that 3 triangles. So copy down 3 triangles on your paper. They don't have to be very elaborate, just as long as these have 4 sides and these have 3 sides. And so when we're talking about a ratio, we're comparing 2 values. So what if I ask you, what is the ratio of squares to triangles? So because we're comparing 2 things, the first thing we want to look at it, well, what are we comparing in this ratio? And this question is asking, what is the ratio of? We want to make sure we pay particular attention to what order this is saying. So the ratio of squares we're looking at first to triangles, squares to triangles. Those are the 2 things we're comparing. So we've already counted. How many squares do we see here? There are 4. So I'm going to go ahead and write down 4. Now, to write a ratio, there's actually 3 different ways. And so we're going to look at 3 different ways to write down a ratio. So the first one is just using words. So I'm comparing squares to triangles. How many triangles are there? There's 3. So I'm going to write down the word 2 in between those 2 numbers. What is the ratio of squares to triangles? It's 4 to 3. We're comparing squares to triangles, 4 to 3. And so we can use that word 2 to separate or to compare the 2 values of the things we're being asked to compare. There's also another way. Instead of using the word 2, sometimes we might use a colon, which is kind of like, it's the 2 dots that you use when you're writing down a time. Maybe like 10 o'clock, and you would put that in between there. Here we would read this as 4, 2, 3. So that colon can be read as the word 2. And then there's a third way, and that's actually as a fraction. So we would say 4 to 3. And we would put the 4 on top since there are 4 squares compared to 3 triangles. So these are the 3 ways of writing a ratio: the word 2, colon, fraction. Now, there is another question that we could ask about this same picture. what is the ratio of triangles to squares? And so notice I've switched the order of the things I'm comparing. I'm still comparing the same things. We've got the picture with the squares and the triangles, but in this question, I'm being asked to compare the ratio, compare triangles to squares, which means triangles needs to come first. So it's very important what order you're asked to compare the things. So in this case, can you guess what this is going to look like? We're still going to be able to write it in 3 different ways. We can use the word, the colon, or the fraction, but the numbers are going to be switched because triangles is going to come first, and there were 3 triangles compared to 4 squares. And we could also write that as 3 triangles compared to 4 squares, or we could write that as 3 over 4. So notice we can use the same format, but if this part of the question switches, we have to pay attention to what it's asking us to compare. So let's do another example, and you can even, let's call this example number 2. You can even maybe pause the video and see if you can answer it before I reveal the answer. So let's say someone named Bill has 2 pet lizards and 7 pet frogs. Do any of you have lizards, pet lizards, or pet frogs? Not my idea of a pet, but that's what Bill has. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what is the ratio of lizards to frogs? Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can write down, how would I write this ratio in 3 different ways? All right, I hope you paused the video, and now I'm going to go ahead and give you the answer. Lizards to frogs here, we're comparing it in the order that we see it. So lizards, 2 lizards, 7 frogs. I would write that as 2, 2, 7, 2 colon 7, or 2 over 7. Likewise, go ahead and answer this question. I bet you know what I'm going to ask. What is the ratio of frogs to lizards? So go ahead, after you've copied down that question, go ahead and see if you can write down what would the ratio look like if I'm asking about the ratio in this order, frogs to lizards. I hope you paused the video. And of course the answer here would be frogs is 7 compared to 2. So 7 to 2, or 7 over 2. So a ratio, again, is just a comparison between 2 values, and we're going to use one of these 3 ways. Now, you don't always have to write it in all 3 ways, but you need to be familiar. Oh, why did I write the word 2 here? That would have been a colon. There we go. All right, let's do one more example. And so example number 3. Let's say that Miss Wallace has 10 girls in her class and 11 boys. So let's write 2 ratios. Let's like the ratio of boys to girls, and then let's write the ratio of girls to boys. All right. Go ahead and take a second and write down the answer. And you can choose one of the 3 ways. You don't necessarily have to write it in all 3 ways, but let's just choose one. All right, I hope you paused the video and went ahead and wrote that down. So let's write the ratio of boys to girls. And so I want to make sure, again, I'm reading this carefully to make sure I'm looking at the order. Boys, well, how many boys were there? There were 11 boys. And so that's the number I'm going to write first. So I'm going to write this one with a colon. So the ratio of boys to girls would be 11 to how many girls? There are 10. And then the ratio of girls to boys, of course, would be just the opposite of that. And I'm going to write this one as, let's say, a fraction. So girls would come first, boys would come second. Girls I'm going to put on top, and 11 boys I'm going to put on the bottom. And so this is how you write a simple ratio. So now keep these notes out. You're going to use these notes for the next couple of practice activities that are assigned to you.